Okay, I've been like up all night, um, and I'm already very emotional. And this is I think this is maybe a good time to make this video because I'm kind of having the same emotions that I had back then. So probably would be a good time to talk about it. Maybe we'll see. Um, so so like I said, my daughter, I I finally got a job outside of the home because we needed money. We didn't have money for food and everything. Um, and at some point, I don't remember exactly when, but um, this sexual assaults continued against me. Obviously, I mean, I don't want to say obviously, but he didn't like full on rape me that I can think of while we were at his parents' house, but there was an incident that really kind of cemented me wanting to leave again. And I don't want to go into too much detail really because it's gross and I don't think you need to know graphic details, but there was an incident and it happened while my daughter was in the room. Now she was asleep, but so she probably didn't know what was going on. But I still think that's disgusting to do when a child is. It doesn't matter to me if the child's in the room. I mean, it doesn't matter if the child is asleep, in my opinion. I mean, it's obviously worse if the child is awake. But the lack of boundaries. Okay, I'll try not to be too graphic, but basically, I was still nursing my daughter, and I was laying on the bed nursing her, and because he's disgusting, her dad he's disgusting. This breastfeeding is not a sexual thing, okay? Breastfeeding is a sacred thing, and I wasn't like, I was breastfeeding. It wasn't anything for him to get excited about, but basically I was laying down and breastfeeding her, and like I said, she was asleep. She had like nursed to sleep or whatever, and he laid down next to me and he was trying to have sex with me while my daughter still latched on. So it's disgusting, right? And I was like, no, like, this is a sacred thing. Like, this is not, breastfeeding is a sacred thing. Like, you cannot do this. This is disgusting, you know? And basically, I wasn't able to stop him from doing anything. I tried. He didn't have sex with me, but I was like, why don't you just go, take care of it yourself, like masturbate, whatever. And like a normal person would think, okay, go in the other room. No, he decided to do it right there. And I kept pulling away from him and pulling away from him, and he kept moving closer and closer, and he wouldn't stop. And like I said, my daughter was asleep, but it's just disgusting. You don't do that when somebody is breastfeeding. It was absolutely disgusting, and it really made me question in my mind, like, I know that that doesn't mean that he would like molest his daughter, but to me, I mean, to me it just wasn't a good thing. And I really thought since that was really inappropriate, I was just like, you know what? So that happened, and then there was a time after that where I think I hit him at some point. It was in the course of an argument. This wasn't at the time that I was being sexually assaulted. We were having an argument about, I think it was about something like that though. And I ran at him and hit him. And I'm only 5'5". Her father is 6'5". So I know that hitting is not right, and I know I shouldn't have hit him. And thankfully he's never hit me. He almost did though. After I hit him, he like pulled his arm back like this, and he was literally just about to hit me, but he stopped himself. So thankfully, but that scared me enough. The sexual assault and then him almost hitting me and just everything just came to the point where I was just like, if this keeps going, this is gonna get worse and worse. Next time, if he actually hits me, he could do a lot of damage. Like I said, he's a lot bigger than I am. So, like I said, I was working 10 to 15 hours a week, minimum wage job. I wanted to leave, and there was really no way for me to have a place with the little money I was making. And we were just constantly yelling at each other. And I just said at one point, I was like, you know, I'm sorry. We're arguing a lot. I really think that I need to get a place or whatever. And I was like, could you help us with money, you know, for a place? And he's just like, no, I need the money for my place. And I'm like, okay. And I told him that I would have to go to a homeless shelter then, because I didn't have enough money for a place right then. And he said he doesn't want his daughter in an effing shelter of any kind. And neither did I. I didn't, really. But at this, I don't know. So basically what I ended up doing was I wanted to go to a domestic violence shelter again. And it's really weird in California. Like any other state I've been to is not like this. They had this really strange rule. Well, okay, this was back before like weed was legal. At that time I was smoking weed, drinking on occasion, but mostly just smoking weed. And I told them that, and they were just like, well, you can't come into the domestic violence shelter unless you've been clean and sober for at least 30 days. And I'm like, okay. They said, you can go to this rehab. If you go to this rehab, then after you finish the rehab, then you can go into the domestic violence shelter. And called the rehab, and they did not have any room in the rehab. So I was like, what am I gonna do, you know? And every other time I left, like I mentioned before, I always told him that we were leaving. I didn't always tell him where we were, but this time I actually lied to him. I said that a neighbor of ours was going to drive us to one of the local markets, and I walked off with her and I didn't come back. And we went to a nearby town, and we stayed in just a regular women's and children's shelter that was run by a local Christian mission. And that was a pretty good situation. I mean, it was fine. It was like a little house, and they did Bible study every day, and it was other women and children. The problem, okay, I know that my daughter was she was 2.5, almost 3 actually. She was still wearing training pants. She wasn't potty trained yet. And I know that's kind of old to be still not potty trained, but it was what it was. And there was in order to get any kind of diapers or training pants or anything like that, you had to go to this one place, and they only would give I want to say 10 diapers a week. It was absolutely insane. And so I went down to because I had quit my job at the bagel shop because I was leaving town, and I didn't want her dad to know where we were and everything. So it was kind of dumb. I mean, I understand why I did it. I was trying to just do the best that I could. But if I had known what was going to happen, I don't think that I would have done that. But so basically my job had a regular paycheck, and then we also had tips. And I guess basically what it was that people would put money in the tip jar, and then we would all split it, and so we would get money at the end of the week or whatever. So I hadn't gotten my tips yet, so I went down to go get them. And we had actually gotten off the bus, and we saw her father. He was on his way to work, and he was like, "Oh, I'm so glad you guys are okay," and hugged my daughter, and then just got on the bus and went to work. And it's he wasn't gonna make an issue out of it. He's just like, "Okay, you're fine, good." And so, but then when I went to get my my money, I guess I guess my daughter's dad had actually put in a missing persons report. I don't know if they had Amber Alert yet. I don't know. I don't think it was an Amber Alert. It was just some kind of missing persons report. And I'm not gonna lie, I was kind of, I guess, maybe becoming mentally unstable. I mean, I guess I kind of was anyway, but basically he kind of brought all that up, mistakes I had made as a parent or whatever. I had left my journal behind when I left, which was the dumbest thing I could have done. But I left my journal, and he found a page that basically showed my mental instability and blah, blah, blah. And he actually tore it out and gave it to the police. So then when what happened was somebody that I worked with, I guess, knew about the missing persons report, and then they just decided to call the police. And then the police showed up, and they were just like, "Okay, where are you guys staying?" And I said, "Homeless shelter, and Dad and I are fighting, blah, 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 blah." And I guess protocol or whatever, because of the mental illness thing, they said, "Okay, honey, let me look at your arms, to see if there's any bruises on you." And there weren't. So they were like, "Okay, you can go." And we were about to leave, and then uh, my daughter's dad's mother, my daughter's grandmother we were living with, she came and was like, she was really upset about us leaving, and she said like, well, you can come back to the house. And I was like, she's like, it's cold, it's winter, like you guys can come back to the house, because this was like around Christmas, left pretty close to Christmas. And she's like, you can come stay. And I was like, do you not hear your son and I fighting all the time? I really don't think that's a good idea. And she goes, oh, I'll kick him out. And for some stupid reason, I should not have cared about this. I guess I had no way of knowing the future. If I had known what I was going to go through and the effects that I'm still going through with our relationship, my daughter and I, it's never going to be the same, you know? God restores things, but you can't just not have somebody with you and have all that happen and everything go back to the way it was. It's never going to go back to the way it was. I can do better, try to repair what I can, but it's so basically I said, for some reason I felt sorry for him. I never should have cared, I guess. But I was like thinking, this is your son. Like, why are you going to kick your own son out? And I felt bad for him. And I was just like, no, that's okay. And the police officer was, I guess, he was like, I'm not against homeless shelters, but I'm against them if you have like an option not to be in one, and it sounds like you have an option. And basically it was just like, I don't think you're totally crazy or anything, but do you want to, like, maybe you should go talk to somebody. And so he wanted me to go to like psych emergency services, and I was like, sure, whatever, because I figured, I mean, I knew that I was having mental health struggles, and I thought, you know, whatever, it's so my daughter went back with her grandmother. I went up to psych emergency. I had to stay overnight. I think I was there 24 hours, maybe not even that long. While I was there, her dad and her family filed an emergency custody order because of my mental illness. And actually CPS came up to the mental hospital, and actually she interviewed me and was asking if I had any concerns about her being there. And I told her about the incident and I even told her about past incidents, sexual assault and all this stuff, and she's just like, well, just because he's been real pushy with you doesn't mean he'd ever do anything to his daughter. And I'm like, okay, I guess. And then she's just like, do you have any other concerns? And I said, well, I'm concerned that they smoke weed in the house, not outside. Like, I would always try to do it outside. And I was just like concerned because, like, she was like, a lot of times, like, her grandparents smoked, and then my daughter would run in right after. So it was a little concerning. She had never had any like breathing problems. Well, she didn't have breathing problems. She did develop allergies, which could just be because we moved to a new place, and this area supposedly is like the worst for allergens. I think there's some place in Florida that's number 1, and the area that we're in is like number 2. But I told them that, and yeah, there were just other things I was concerned about, but basically, and then when they released me, I was like, can I just go pick up my daughter? Like, this hasn't, because it wasn't like they filed it, but it wasn't like finalized. They filed the papers. It wasn't, you have to like serve the person first. I think you have to go to court or something. Like, they hadn't done any of that stuff. So the psychiatrist, I was like, can I just go pick her up? Like, and he's like, you could, but you need to think about how that's going to affect your family. And I'm like, I didn't even know what he meant by that. And I thought, okay. And what I thought he meant, and maybe he did, was that if I went and picked her up, it was just went and took her again, that it would make me look more mentally unstable. And maybe that was true, but I think me not going back was probably the worst thing I could have done, because I could have had another opportunity to go. But now that they had gotten the courts involved, I think I was scared. And I thought maybe it would be easier to just go through the court system. And it turned into this really long, like, the next several videos are probably going to make me like crying more and talking about this court battle that just went on for years, and it was a nightmare. And it's like I said, the effects are still there. Our separation, especially with how close we were, and me being with her constantly most of the time, and then just only being away for, like I said, 10 to 15 hours a week. It wasn't exactly good for her to just be without me. And like I said, I mean, disruptions in attachment can be very difficult and harmful to children. And she knows now, I think, that I'm there for her. But it's just one of those things that, like, it's a serious trauma. And also, I'll get into it later. There's a lot of things. It was a nightmare for years. Things I couldn't control. Things I was always concerned about that I couldn't do anything about. But yeah, so basically what happened was I ended up I went back to the women's children's shelter by myself. I think it was actually Christmas. It was really close to Christmas, or it was Christmas. And actually, I watched, everybody was watching like a movie, a Christmas movie. And it was it was Mary and baby Jesus. And, you know, sacred bond. And I just couldn't stop crying because I didn't have my baby. And then when I don't even remember how this happened, but I don't even remember why. I think that they wanted me to go rehab, even though I was just smoking pot, but so I went to a rehab, and everybody else there was doing hard drugs, had been doing hard drugs, or was alcoholics. There were people that had the same situation. There was one girl there that was an alcoholic, tried to leave an abusive situation, and she said that same thing happened. She called the domestic violence shelter, and because she was drinking, they wouldn't let her in. And basically she told them that, like, he was gonna kill her, and they just said, we'll start running. It's just a complete lack of compassion. And, like, I've never ever seen any kind of domestic violence shelter like this. I've stayed in domestic violence shelter. Like, I don't know why. I don't know why they're like this. And it's weird because it's California. And you would think, they're supposed to be progressive here. I mean, that was a while ago, but still. It's just like crazy. I was in more conservative states before and got better help. It's just funny because, like, I don't know. It's a long, but you would think, like, I don't know, some super liberal people will try to act like they care. And then, I don't know. It's hard to explain. Okay, so basically, I was in the rehab, and then my daughter, so basically, I had, like, well, it wasn't, like, in the courts. It was just that it was, like, supervised visits that my daughter's grandma would bring her, and she brought her on Christmas, and she was wearing a really beautiful dress that I had bought her, like red velvet dress and white tights. And my daughter was a little, she's like most kids, but she was pretty she liked to do kid stuff, climbing trees. And there was a tree, and actually my daughter didn't like get up in the tree even. She was just trying to like she was trying to get up to like a very low part, and I was just like holding her and trying to help her get up. And my daughter's grandma was like, "Oh, don't let her do that, she's gonna ruin her tights." And I'm like, it's fine. I was never the kind of mom that cared that much about ruining clothes. I was more like, okay, she's playing, she's a child, whatever, like. So we got into a little bit of an argument about that, and she decided, because I was arguing with her, to end this visit, and she left with my daughter. And then I realized that if I wanted to see her, I would need to like see her regularly and not have stuff like that happen. Then I needed to go to court. So basically, I was gonna stay there longer at the rehab, but there was a rule that you couldn't like leave the premises for the first so many days. I can't remember how long. I want to say it was like 60 days. And I was like, I can't wait that long to see my daughter. And like I said, I was only really like smoking pot, and I was just like, I'm just gonna leave, because we would do like daily walks, and me and the other girls went for a walk, and I brought my backpack with me, and they were just like, why did you bring your backpack? And I was just like, I'm just gonna leave. And they're like, you just smoke pot, you're not like a heroin addict like the rest of us, like whatever, it's fine, good luck. So I left, and I had to go through the courts. I finally ended up getting supervised visitation, but it took like a month or something, so I didn't see her for like a month. And she still walked up and gave me a hug the first time I saw her. So it was fine, but I could tell she was a little sad about the situation. She just didn't seem like the same happy kid. And yeah, I wasn't sure about whether they had enough food, because like I said, that was an issue before. So I actually started working at Amy's. I started working at a frozen foods company, and I like got discounted frozen food, and so I started. I would just like buy food every time I was there, and I started collecting it. Like I just at the shelter. I was staying in a regular homeless shelter. I should clarify. I went to a regular homeless shelter after that, a co-ed, just regular homeless shelter. While I was there, I got the job at the factory, and I started just collecting a bunch of food so that I could give it to her when I saw her again. And that was what I did. I just brought a whole bunch of food, and I was like, here. So yeah, started on the supervised visits, and that was where my long, horrible journey began with custody and all that.